Hello, my name's Andy Newport. Welcome to this week's edition of the Record Rangers podcast, brought to you by NordVPN, the best place to get premium cyber security, and all for the price of a cup of coffee per month. I'm joined by Scott McDermott. Scott, I think the Rangers supporters are going to need something maybe a bit stronger than a cup of coffee this morning. It's been, I think you do too. I think you're struggling
I
with a hay fever this morning, are you?
think I need something stronger than a coffee, I'll tell you that.
I mean, it's been a difficult weekend for the Rangers sport, but a difficult couple of weeks, really, just with the way that the title collapse has unfolded. You were at Celtic Park yesterday. Just talk us through what you saw from a Rangers team that got themselves into a fairly decent position early on with that goal from Mikey Moore.
Where do you start, Andy? First of all, I just have to say, I think the biggest indictment of Rangers and what happened yesterday, the biggest indictment of all is that it was totally expected. No, that type of performance and ultimately that result, I must admit, is what I expected getting into the game from a Rangers point of view. And I think that's always bad news when people are kind of predicting what's going to happen. But no, we've been in that in terms of watching Rangers. We've been in that movie for so many times now, and it was the same again. Look, Rangers started the game pretty well. There was obviously a big atmosphere in the ground, but I thought they kind of quietened it down early on. I thought they were trying to kind of press Celtic quite high up as they've done in the past and get a bit of joy. And obviously they score a really good goal. Manny Fernandez does great with a press on Luke McCowan, feeds Yusuf Sharmiti, who I thought the first 20-25 minutes looked as if he had the Celtic defence on toast, if I'm being honest. And Mikey Moore slots away a rebound for 1-0, and you thought, right, well, here goes, this a chance for them to go and get a positive result and really throw a cat among the pigeons in terms of the title race. But I just felt, Danny Rohl said the post-match at Tynecastle just over a week ago actually today, that when Rangers opened the scoring against Hearts, when they came out the second half, he felt as if they retreated. They went back the way into their own box. I felt as if immediately after scoring at Celtic Park, that's exactly what they did. Again, Andy, they invited Celtic onto them, roared on by a big crowd, and the equaliser was coming. You can pick the bones out of the defending for the Yang goal, which, again, for a Rangers point of view, is really poor. But Celtic are back in it at one each. I thought the first half was eachy peachy. It was a bit of a mad game, actually. It was kind of end to end. Both teams weren't great on the ball. But Rangers are obviously still well in it at that stage. But at half time, when you're really looking for, as an away team, you're looking to start the second half with a bit of steel, a bit of resilience. Celtic are going to come at you, so you need to get through that wee period. And ultimately, yet again, that's when Rangers wilted. The first sign of pressure, first sign of adversity, and bang, within 4 minutes, they've conceded 2 goals. And the defending, I know Maida's strike for the second goal, the overhead kicks, out of this world, but the defending for the Maida's first goal is diabolical. And even for his wonder goal, the clearance for Conor Barron is so weak, so poor at the near post, that allows Maida to get his shot off. And when it goes 3-1, the game's over, the crowd are up for it. Celtic are in a really good place. I thought Rangers kind of rallied towards the end, but again, we've seen that so many times when they're down in these derby games. They normally rally towards the end. Majowski hits the bar, obviously, but by that stage, the game was gone. And it condemned Rangers to third place in the league, which, again, is a damning indictment of the season. It left Celtic and Hearts, obviously, to fight out the title. And in terms of the bigger picture, the manner of defeat and what's happened post-split has put monumental pressure on Danny Rohl. I mean, Celtic fans singing his name in the ground yesterday, laughing at him. Rangers fans livid in the corner, this kind of post-split capitulation after such promise going into the split. It's been a horrendous fortnight for Rangers as a club, but also for Danny Rohl as manager.
We'll come to the manager a bit later on, but just sort of more on the game. I mean, I felt watching it on TV that really where Rangers, I mean, you can talk about the defending obviously and just how poor it was, especially that second goal. I mean, there's about 6 or 7 individual errors within it, not least the captain, James Tavernier, in his final game. But for me, where they lost control of the game was the middle of the park. You know, they've done so well to get themselves in front. I thought Chukwani in the early stages was completely lost out there. Obviously, he played in a couple of firm games. This is his first taste at Celtic Park. I don't know if he's caught up by the emotion or the atmosphere, but he never seemed to really sense where the danger was around him. He was slack with his passing. He was slack with just his awareness of where players were around about him. And obviously that, comes to the fore at the goal that Celtic score. Completely switches off and allows his runner to get the box and put the cross in for Yang to score. But I just think you talk about it being a game where it was end to end in a basketball game, but there were spaces there for Rangers to attack and to get into and make more out of. But the composure in the ball in the engine room at key moments was so poor. And this comes back to, I think, the criticism over Danny Rohl is, what is the style of play? Can you have a style of play where you've got a midfield who are so, lacking in quality on the ball?
Yeah.
Or is this more just, are they playing to instruction? This is the kind of, the Danny Rohl just wants a more sort of back to front kind of, just lump it forward kind of brand of football, which again brings me to the case, why did they start trying to play out yesterday? That put them in trouble so many times yesterday. We're accused of going far too direct at the last Old Firm game and just lumping it forward. They're now starting to play out in the box from every goal kick. I mean, I'm just, so many times I look at a Danny Rohl team and I'm like, where is this coming from? Where is this, sudden change come from? I mean, how did you see that?
You're totally right about the midfield. I was doing some of the ratings yesterday on Rangers players for the paper, and I said that for me, Barron and Chukwani, they put a shift in. I'll no accuse them in not putting a shift in. They worked hard, they grafted, they'll try to fill gaps, try to kind of break up Celtic's play. But you're right, their touch on the ball was dreadful at times in the first half. I think in the first 10 minutes, Chukwani had one where he tries to cushion a pass and it's short and Maida nips in and starts a Celtic attack. There was another one.
That happened 2 or 3 times with him specifically. I texted you during the game going, Chukwani is really struggling here.
Yeah, there was another one with Barron where Celtic tried to hit the front man. Barron did really well. He cut it out, kind of shielding his defence, but his first touch was so bad it took the ball away from him. And you're right, but when you go with a midfield like that, and I actually thought Diomande did okay in the first half because he did what Diomande's good at. He's a runner, he's wiry, he gets in about people, he's got running power, he can actually get you up the pitch. He's quite good in tight situations. I thought he got Rangers out a couple of times. But the 2 sitters, the 2 number 6s, just no good enough on the ball. And I've had this conversation with Rangers fans in the past, and even when you think about a few years ago, and Rangers lost all Firm games, but see when they had a midfield of Stephen Davis, Ryan Jack, Glenn Kamara, even throw Scott Arfield, Joe Aribo into that, those guys could keep the ball for fun. I remember one game.
The argument was the first 3 of those that they were all quite similar. They did the kind of same job, but if you keep the ball, it doesn't matter. Possession is king.
I remember a game. I think it was a game Rangers lost 3-0 to Ange Postecoglou's Celtic team. When it was Giovanni Van Bronckhorst Rangers, they got blown away in the first half. I think I might say they put Ryan Jack on the second half. The second half was 0-0. Ryan Jack, and I know the game was gone by that point when Celtic had won the game, but in terms of just keeping possession and making sure it didn't get any more than 3 Ryan Jack totally controlled the second half pretty much on his own. So these guys were so adept at keeping the ball, and I think you're right. They really lack a Davis or a Kamara or a Jack in there just to keep possession, keep the ball moving, just to give you a breather, if nothing else, when Celtic are on top of you. So I totally agree. They lost the battle, but I thought McGregor and Engels were excellent for Celtic, or certainly better than Rangers midfield. So when you lose that battle in there, then it's an uphill task.
Just looking on to some of the big flashpoints, then obviously you can't have an Old Firm game without having, a controversial refereeing moment. With a couple of them, obviously, and especially in the first half, you're looking at the Celtic equaliser. I think it was Benjamin Negrin who's in front of Jack Butland as Yang sort of plops it into the net. For you, is it offside? Does it count? Is he obstructing the goalkeeper's eye line there?
No, for me, Andy, I must admit. No, I mean, of course he's in an offside position, though he's standing right in front of the keeper. But for me, and I know the law is that if he's obstructing the view, I don't think he is obstructing the view for Jack Butland anyway. But aside for that, and I know it's no the law, but the ball's well away for Jack Butland. I mean, he's not even if he's got a clear view of it and there's nobody standing in front of him, he's not getting anywhere near the shot. And you could argue maybe about his positioning. Is he too close to his
front post?
His front post, but the shot's miles away from him. I mean, it's getting in anyway. So no, I've no. For Rangers' point of view, I wouldn't have many complaints about that decision.
And then what about the Alistair Johnston tackle on Mikey Moore? Only gets a yellow. I must admit, I think like the guys in the Chris Boyd and the other TV pundits, Neil Lennon, James McFadden, watching it in Sky at first view, and I thought, it's just a clean tackle, robust, but a clean tackle. But when you see the replay, he's caught my ankle high. Okay, not high up the ankle, but certainly studs planted into the ankle. For you, should that have been a red?
I think it should have been. I must admit, like you, on first viewing, I didn't think it was that bad, but it was interesting at the game. I don't know if they picked it up on TV, but I mean, Mikey Moore was speaking to the ref, Nick Walsh, and telling him, it was studs up. He was making that kind of gesture. You could tell Mikey Moore wasn't happy with it. And then also when I watched that again at full time, you just don't get away with those tackles anymore, Andy. When he
did. Alistair Johnston did, didn't he? So
sorry, you shouldn't get away with those kind of tackles, and you don't normally get away with them in the modern day game. I know people are saying, he won the ball, and that just doesn't matter anymore. If you follow through, and as you say, studs are up and it's above the ankle, I think 9 times out of 10 these days you get a red card for it, and I'm just amazed. I'm amazed that VAR's had a look at it. I think it was John Beaton on VAR. I'm amazed that he's had a look at it and no asked Nick Walsh to go and have a second look, because we've seen a few of them this season. I heard Andy Halliday, I think, on the TV last night mention a few, like Fata at Dundee United, the boy Young at St Mirren. No, I would argue that the ones they get sent off were less ferocious.
Last week at Easter Road with
Jamie McGrath. Yep. So I think Alistair Johnston's got away with one. And but the thing is, we're sitting here and Rangers have lost. They've deservedly lost, and we're criticising the performance and whatever else. But that was a huge decision because it's at 1 each. It's just before half time. That would have had a major impact on the game. I'm not saying Rangers would have taken it for the game against 10 men, but I don't think you can argue it's a huge moment in the game at that stage.
I must admit, I did have a wee chuckle to myself when Kieran Tierney gets booked in the second half instead of Alistair Johnston after he sort of set two with two Robins, because you just know every referee in the world is doing everything they can not to send a player off there a second yellow for that kind of incident. You have to book two players just to even it up. But really, it should have been Johnston, because it's him who sort of starts the whole drama with Romans.
It's him and Romans that are going kind of head to head, isn't it?
Yeah. And, and obviously Nick Walsh is looking for everybody else in the green and white jersey. They can't dish out the yellow. So I've seen a few Rangers fans complain about that one. I think it's perfectly justified. But
Ian Tierney was a peacemaker in the whole thing.
I mean, he certainly would be amused as he's walking away, having been booked for that one. But I mean, what now then, Scott? I mean, like,
I was just going. Sorry, I was just going to say before he's just in general, in terms of the performance with Rangers, and I said this last night on Hotline Live. This is just a basic thing, and we probably kind of knew this anyway going into the game. But you look at Maeda yesterday and the performance he put in, aside for the goal, I just don't think Rangers have got a player in the squad who's willing to put that level of work in and that level of graft and run that much. And I know people might kind of say, "Oh, what does that mean?" But no, Danny Rohl's in trouble now as Rangers manager, and if any manager can't get his team to run hard for him, then I think it's going to be a struggle. And I think Rangers will get into next season or looking ahead to next season, really need to get back to basics and start working again. Because I don't think enough of these players are putting a proper shift in. Danny Rohl called some of them lazy last week after the game at Hearts. We get back to the first day of the season. Russell Martin accused him of big egos at Firth Park. Has too much changed since then? Danny Rohl might have thought it had changed when he was on a kind of decent winning run, getting Rangers back into the title race. But I think the cold light of day will look at what's happened post-split and really ask himself, who can I trust here to put a shift in? Because honestly, I think if Rangers have got any hope of getting back to being champions again, the top team in Scotland, they really need to get back to basics, and they're going to need to graft first and foremost. Forget styles, types of football, systems, whatever. They're going to need to graft, because the one thing Martin O'Neill has got this Celtic team doing since he took over, maybe one game, apart from one game at Tannadice, is every one of those players that played yesterday are working for him, working for the manager, wanting to put a shift in, and now you've actually now got a second team going for the title with a manager that demands his team graft first and foremost, and Derek McInnes and Hart. So it might sound like a simple thing, but I think it's a big issue for Rangers going forward. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I'm just thinking, if you look at, it's very top of European football right now. You've got a Real Madrid team who have got these superstars. You get Mbappe, Vinicius, who really think that they're too good to run, and you're now seeing the sort of how that's unraveled. PSG. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you've seen, there's a clip of Luis Enrique a couple of years back at PSG trying to implore Mbappe before he left just to run more, and obviously Messi's never got through. I think I saw a clip of him last week in his final sort of few months at PSG. Somebody never passed the ball, so he just stopped making the forward run and just let the guy carry on himself, and it just sort of summed up that big ego that he's got. What I'm saying is that you look at PSG now, this is the very best team in world football right now, and they run non-stop. They've got superstar lineup, but they don't show that ego. And it's like, well, if it's good enough for PSG, how can any Rangers player realistically look themselves in the eye and go, I'm not going to graft for my team right now, especially the position they're in. So I mean, I just think that should always be the absolute basic of any. It doesn't matter a Rangers team. If you're serious about winning titles, you have to work your backside off. And I think you're entirely right. I don't think there's been enough guys. And I think what Danny Rohl said at the presser before the game was interesting. It's not so much just about working in terms of to track your man, to chase a winger down the line. It's working hard enough to get into space. And I think that's been the trouble with this Rangers team. We saw it against Motherwell at home. 7 minutes into the game, there's jeers around the place. Fans are already growing frustrated, and it's because you get centre-back standing with foot in the ball and there's no options in front of them. It's static. Whereas you look at the best teams in the world, and the centre-back will get the ball, he'll look up and he'll have 3 or 4 guys all screaming for the ball, give me it, I'm in space. And that's been the trouble with this Rangers team, is that they don't work hard enough off the ball, and they certainly don't work hard enough on it either. I mean, where do you stand with where Danny Rohl is then? Do you think he's now, fighting for his job in these last 2 games, or are minds made up, or do you think the Americans will go, listen, this has been stage 1 of a longer term project? Okay, it's not finished the way they wanted, but the job is never going to be done. And I think they've said that previously, that this was never going to be something that could be solved in 1 or 2 transfer windows. This was always going to take longer.
It's funny, Andy, because if you'd have said to me 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think I said this on here, I thought Danny Rohl was absolutely guaranteed to be starting the new season as Rangers manager. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. Irrespective of what happened in the league, but I just couldn't envisage Rangers losing 3 games in the trot in the split. No, I thought they'd get into the split competitive and trying to win the league. And I thought if Danny Rohl, if they come up short and finish second behind Hearts or even behind Celtic, given the start to the season Rangers had, not saying fans would have been happy, but I think it would have bought them a bit of goodwill getting into the next season. I think it would have real support, real backing for the fans that, given the kind of clawing back of the 13-point deficit to at least compete for the title, would be good kind of brownie points for them getting into the new campaign. But I just don't think you can underestimate how damaging these 3 defeats have been. The manner of these defeats to Motherwell, Hearts and Celtic. And he's now left with 2 dead rubbers at the end of the season against Hibs and Falkirk that just don't matter anymore. And the fans are angry now. They almost got teased into believing there was a potential title challenge, and yet again they've been let down. I keep saying it, 15 years, 12 trophyless seasons. I mean, for Rangers fans, that kind of record is just unthinkable. So to answer your question, now I actually do think he's fighting for his job. I agree with you. I think that the natural instinct of Andrew Kavanagh, the 49ers and the Rangers owners will be, or will have always been, certainly up until now, that it's a long-term thing with Danny Rohl. He's 37-year-old. He's supposedly one of Europe's up-and-coming coaches. They're obviously impressed with the work he done when he first arrived at Rangers. So I don't think up until very recently that there'd have been any doubts that
Scott, is that the key thing? He's one of Europe's most up-and-coming coaches. Is there an argument now to be made that we've seen this play out with Michael Beale, with obviously Wilfred Nancy across the road at Celtic Park, with obviously Russell Martin this year now with Danny Rohl, that in order to manage Rangers and Celtic, it's not enough just to be a good coach. And that, I mean, we've always kind of known this, you have to be a man of a bigger stature, a character of a bigger stature, but is this now really underlined that being Rangers and Celtic, man, yeah, you need to have a good tactical acumen. You need to know your stuff, or you've got somebody on your coaching staff who knows his stuff. I mean, I think back to Steven Gerrard. Michael Beale at that point was the guy that was all said to be the training ground guru, the tactics guru, but it was a leader of men you needed, and that's what Gerrard provided. And when Beale took over is what he lacked. It wasn't a proper leader of men. And is that now what you're seeing with this Rangers team? Because Danny Rohl keeps trying to bat away question marks over mentality. Every time he defends his players' mentality then lets him down and lets that argument down. I mean, how else do you blame what we saw at Celtic Park, what we saw at Tynecastle, what we saw against Motherwell, even what we saw against Falkirk 3-4 weeks ago when they find themselves 3-0, 2-1 down at half time, is that if it's not a problem to do with mentality, that it's not to do with a team that just cannot maintain intensity for a full 90 minutes.
Of course it's mentality. I mean, ability obviously comes into it, but if you're a team that gets yourself into a position to go and challenge for a title and there's only lost 2 games, there's only felt defeat in 2 games the whole season, and then you get to crunch time, with 5 games to go, when you've actually got a chance to go and win it, and you lose 3 in the bounce in the manner that they did, of course it's to do with mentality, because they proved up to that point, that they could beat Hearts. No, they beat Hearts at Ibrox. They beat.
Does that tell you then that a Danny Rohl type manager is the wrong appointment? That you might want him as your number 2, you might want him there, but you need somebody who's a proper, that can go and call a spade, that'll go and kick some arses in a dressing room at half time and properly hold players to account.
I've said it all along. I mean, I said this in the summer before they appointed Russell Martin. To me, and it's only my opinion, Rangers and Celtic and the job as manager at those clubs is totally unique. No, it's unique to anywhere else in the world. You need to be a manager, no, not a coach. No, you need to be able to handle so many different aspects of that job that in other jobs, don't come into it. When the best way to describe it is, when I think of the most successful Old Firm managers in my lifetime, they've all been of a certain ilk. Walter Smith, Alex McLeish, Steven Gerrard, at Celtic, Neil Lennon, Martin O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers. Probably like Ange Postecoglou and Dick Advocaat, probably the outliers in that. But you could argue, Advocaat has a lot to do with the finances that he had at his disposal. Postecoglou, you have to hold your hands up and say it was magnificent. But even though I'm saying he's an outlier because he had no real link to Celtic, maybe didn't understand the club or the culture before he came in. But the thing about Postecoglou, he was definitely a leader of men. I mean,
he bought into it as well. I mean, you can see he developed that affinity with the fans. I mean,
he's got stature and he's got an aura about him. I remember being at his unveiling as Celtic manager, and I'll never forget it. I was in the car park at Celtic Park after it, and I said to one of our colleagues, I thought, this guy's going to be top draw. I just knew for the minute I thought he was just made for Celtic, made for Glasgow, made for the Old Firm. And Rangers, quite simply, have appointed too many managers that haven't been up to it in that sense. So no, that's not a criticism of Danny Rohl. We've praised Danny Rohl this season for the job he's done quite rightly in getting Rangers back on track and getting them involved in a title race. We like him as a guy. We think he's got no ability as a coach. There's no doubt about that. Both of us spoke to guys at Sheffield Wednesday and people in Germany before he came in, and they talk really highly of him as a coach. But this job is different, and
I think it's bigger than that, isn't it?
Aye, and I said last week, that personally, I think Danny Rohl should still be manager at the start of next season. I probably do. I probably think he deserves a crack at it. I think coming in October and only having one window, it's not enough time probably to really put your imprint on a team and a squad. So my natural instinct is probably to say, no, he does deserve a crack at it in the summer. But if the Rangers owners look at it and discuss what we're discussing now in terms of the type of figure they need, to fix that or try and fix that mentality issue, then that means going down a different road. And if they're going to go down a different road, I would suggest they're better making a decision on Danny Rohl now rather than waiting to the start of next season.
I mean, you put it this way in the sense of that. Okay, I think that they waited too long to get rid of Russell Martin in the end, but they still sacked a manager 7 games in, not only to a season but to a new sort of regime. To have to sack a manager after 7 games is pretty early, but also kind of shows that there's a ruthless element to them. They didn't just part ways with Patrick Stewart and Kevin Fairwell. They sacked them. I mean, they're pretty much on record as basically saying that. So do you think that ruthless edge? I mean, what I'm asking is, do you think Danny Rohl will be sacked? I mean, do you think if he cannot find a way to get this team back to winning ways and showing something in these final 2 games, even if that, I mean, does that even matter? Does 2 wins even save him?
I don't think that matters. My gut feeling, Andy, is that they will back him and they'll stick with him and start the next season. That's my gut feeling. However, I do think there'll be doubts. There'll be more doubts in the minds of Andrew Kavanagh and the people around him about Danny Rohl's credentials now than there were a month ago, because they'll be worried. They'll be worried that capitulation, that there's no getting away from it. They'll be worried that, no, after that Falkirk game, scoring 6, and Rangers fans thought they were, no, this is it. This is a title running, and we're going to get they're going to get their hands in the trophy. The owners will be worried that it's collapsed. There's no other word for it. No, post split, when the pressure's been on against the teams around them, they've wilted. The first sign of adversity, and they've wilted, and they've threw away a golden opportunity, by the way, to go and win a league. Not only just win a league, but get into the Champions League and get 40-odd million quid. That will be there's no doubt that will be a worry for Kavanagh and the owners. And they've got a big call to make in the summer, but ultimately, I think he'll probably have just done enough. That they'll have enough faith in him to give him another window and to start the next campaign.
I'm just thinking out loud here. I mean, do you think, obviously, Danny Rohl made a big sort of point of when he was appointed, he wanted a local coach, obviously. In the end, he stuck by Stephen Smith, who'd obviously been there in that sort of caretaker capacity after Russell Martin's departure. But do you think he could do with having an older head? As you say, as a young coach, 37. Okay, he's been coaching for the best part of 20 years since his playing career finished. He's worked with some big figures in Germany. But do you think having an older head, an older Scottish head alongside him, maybe not for the tactical stuff, but for that emotional stuff, for that just local feel, going to a certain ground and having a reading of what the atmosphere is going to be like and how best to negotiate things with the fans here? Do you think that would help? I mean, we do know that, obviously, I know from Andrew Kavanagh's point of view, he's been discussing a lot with the sort of legends, the Mark Haleys, Lee McCullochs, Barry Ferguson of this parish. I know Barry I know for a fact Barry would really fancy going back in there unless he was going to be his own man. But do you think having, just again, somebody who understands the club and understands the landscape here might benefit him? Just somebody with that older head, that experience.
You'll just want to see Bomber Brown in the dressing room.
Listen, if the box office Bomber, aye.
Nah, listen, I don't know if Danny Rohl doesn't know what it's like to go to Dens Park on a Tuesday night by now, then he's never gonna know. If he doesn't know now what this club and what success means to these supporters, if he doesn't know how passionate these fans are and how starved of success they've been for the last 10 to 15 years, then he'll never know. And listen, there's people at the training ground. There is people around him that knows. He's had, as you say, he's had the likes of Barry and McCulloch and Haley and that, Bomber. He's had these guys at the training ground that have spoken to them. So he knows now what it's all about. And I think that'll be another reason why he'll get another crack at it. Because listen, every manager, I think Danny Rohl will own up to mistakes. He said yesterday after the game that they will take real learnings for what's happened in these 3 post-split games and make sure they're better for it next season. So on that level, you'd think, it deserves a chance to make up for it, if you like. It deserves a chance to put what he's learned into practice at the start of next season. But he's going to need some new players. He's going to need some players going out the way. And it's a monumental task, because I think Hearts are probably only going to get stronger, and certainly Celtic. Well, I don't think it'll be anywhere near as turbulent at Celtic next season as it was this year. Effectively 3 changes of manager, fan unrest,
I do think you'll see a huge turnover at Celtic. There has to be. There will be. So I mean that leads a certain level of uncertainty.
Yeah, of course.
Next year.
Postecoglou proved that can be done. I remember the same kind of chat when he came in. If it's settled at Celtic, or if there's some kind of settling down, in terms of board level and with supporters and stuff, if they get the right manager in, and we know they've got funds to spend, then and they get good players in like Postecoglou did, they'll obviously be a big threat, probably even more of a threat than they've been this season. So that's all of that. I think has got to come into Andrew Kavanagh's thinking, when he's making big decisions over the summer.
Just before we wrap up, obviously all eyes Wednesday night will be for part for Celtic against Motherwell and Tynecastle, for Hearts against Falkirk, Rangers at home to Hibs. I'm not going to ask you to predict the score. I'm going to ask you to predict the crowd.
Jeez.
What do you think? What do you think? I mean, I've already seen a lot of folk talking about organising some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a boycott or a no-show, just to kind of ram through the frustration, the anger about the way that this title charge is allowed to sort of fizzle out.
There'll be big spaces, and they won't. I mean, I think we know that for a fact. If you put yourself in the position of a Rangers fan, I mean, how motivated are you to go and watch that game on Wednesday night after it's happened? I know you go and support your team through thick and thin. Been a lot more thick for these Rangers fans, in the last few years, but there'll be plenty of them thinking, "No, I'll just get a miss." I mean, as I say, it means. I just think the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. These two games now mean absolutely nothing. Of course, Danny Rohl and the players will want to put on a good performance. Of course, they want to try and finish the season with as many points as they can, as many wins as they can. They'll at least put a couple of victories on the board post-split after 3 defeats in a row. But the feeling or the atmosphere within the fan base is back to being really low again. And it'll be interesting to see what he does with the team. I got a text last night for a guy I know, big Rangers fan, saying a couple of younger boys should get a chance in these last 2 games. I'm assuming he's meaning maybe boys like Kyle Glasgow or something, or he's only turned 16, but could you see a couple of these really kind of highly rated youngsters? And you probably should. If I was manager, if I was a fan, that's what you would kind of want to see, because I say there's nothing riding on these games. But my response to him was, there's every chance it'll just be like an Asgard or a Gassama or something that gets a start again, and that pretty much sums up the campaign for Rangers if that happens, because a lot of these guys haven't cut it. A lot of these guys aren't going to be good enough going forward.
I mean, just what you're saying about Asgard, I mean, that is the sort of thought process I went through my head as a second half's wearing on. Rangers are desperate for a way back into the game, and really all Danny Rohl's got to turn to in the bench is Gassama and Asgard, 2 guys who have just really not lived up to the hype and the expectation, and that probably tells you much where Rangers are, that they've just a team that have failed to sort of deliver what was expected of them this season.
And Asgard came on, and he actually did okay when he came on. He had to drop into central midfield late in the game and did fine on the ball. Probably actually kept the ball better than Rangers midfield had done earlier in the game. But at one stage, he had a kind of nice wee pivot in the middle of the pitch, and then he goes and nutmegs Maida, and I think it was a brilliant wee nutmeg. In the grand scheme of things, it just that to me almost just summed up Asgard and summed up this Rangers squad. Nice wee bit of flair that meant absolutely nothing. The guy you're nutmegging has just stuck 2 goals in at the other end to condemn you to another defeat. It's
What was the phrase John McGinn famously used on Twitter once? All fart, no, I'll leave the rest of it. I'll leave the rest of these to sum it up. I mean, that's kind of a fair description of the Rangers this season, is that they're flattered to deceive, let's put it that way. Right, I think we'll just leave it there. Obviously, 2 more games to go. We'll be back next week to discuss the final game against Falkirk, and then perhaps a summation of where Rangers stand heading into the new season. So we'll thank again to our sponsors, NordVPN. You'll be able to listen to this episode and many others on YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, and Spotify. So please like and review, as that helps us to spread the pod far and wide. You can also keep up to date with all the latest news coming out at Ibrox at dailyrecord.co.uk, as well as in the paper. So Scott and I thank you for tuning in this week, and we will see you again next time.